The millionaire came home early because his meeting ended sooner than expected. But the moment he stepped inside, he froze. His two mischievous children, who never listened to any tutor, were sitting quietly in the study room, listening with full focus to the maid's 8-year-old daughter as she explained a math problem even adults struggle to solve. In that one unexpected moment, his entire world changed forever. Before we dive in, tell us, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your country in the comments below. Adrian Cole was not supposed to be home. At least, that's what everyone in the mansion believed. His flights were planned weeks in advance. His meetings were stacked one after another like glass towers. His schedule was a wall no one could climb. So when his car rolled through the iron gates 2 hours earlier than usual, the guard stared in surprise, and the housekeeper rushed to straighten her apron. Adrian stepped out of the car, his suit still sharp from the boardroom, his face cold from the day's battles. He had just closed a huge deal, the kind of deal that made other people call him brilliant and ruthless in the same sentence. His phone was full of congratulation messages, but his heart was strangely empty. He wanted silence, a shower, maybe a drink, and then numb sleep. He pushed open the front door and walked into the cool hallway. The marble floor reflected his polished shoes. The walls were lined with modern art he barely remembered buying. The air smelled of expensive candles and fresh flowers, arranged by someone he never bothered to know. He was alone. That's how he liked it. Or so he had always told himself. As he moved deeper into the house, he noticed something unusual. The mansion was not silent. Faint voices floated down the corridor. Not the casual chatter of staff, not the polite tones of tutors, but excited whispers. And something else. Laughter. He frowned. The sound was coming from the study room. He slowed his steps, his brows knitting together. That room was for his children's formal learning, their private tutors, their carefully selected books. No one was supposed to treat it like a playground. He reached the door and stopped. What he saw on the other side did not make sense. His 14-year-old daughter, Elena, usually distant and glued to her phone, was sitting on the edge of her chair, eyes bright. His 12-year-old son, Max, who could never sit still, was leaning forward with both elbows on the table, completely focused. And in front of them, standing on a small wooden stool so she could reach the whiteboard, was a tiny girl with dark brown skin and thick braids that bounced when she moved. Zuri, the maid's 8-year-old daughter. She held a marker in her small hand, drawing shapes and numbers on the board, with quick, sure strokes. Around her, the room was filled with open books, scribbled papers, and two very quiet rich kids who looked at her as if she were some kind of magician. Adrian's hand tightened on the doorknob. On the whiteboard, he saw patterns he recognized from his own school days. Not simple sums or basic fractions. There were angles, graphs, and something that looked like the early steps of algebra. On another corner of the board, he saw drawings of stars and arrows, like a child's version of space diagrams. Max raised his hand, like a student in class. "But why does it always make a triangle?" he asked. Zuri grinned, her eyes shining. "Because," she said, tapping the board, "when you connect these 3 points, no matter how you move them, you're still making 3 sides and 3 corners. That's what a triangle is. It's like a friendship between 3 dots that never changes." Elena giggled softly. "A friendship between 3 dots," she repeated. "I like that." Adrian felt his chest tighten. No tutor had ever made his children talk like that. They usually left the room with half-remembered facts and heavy sighs, not with smiles. He stayed in the doorway, invisible to them, his mind racing. What is she doing? How does she know any of this? Zuri jumped down from the stool and walked to the table, her bare feet almost silent on the carpet. She pointed at Max's notebook. You did this part right, she said gently, but here you rushed. Max looked worried. Did I mess it all up? No, she said, shaking her head. You just skipped a step. See? When you skip steps, you feel lost later, but when you go slowly, the problem becomes your friend. Elena smiled. You sound like an old teacher, she teased. Zuri shrugged, a little shy now. I just like solving things. Adrian's throat felt dry. He could not remember the last time his children sounded so eager, so alive. Their official tutors, expensive, highly trained, with long degrees, always spoke in strict voices and complicated words. Zuri spoke in pictures and feelings, and somehow it was working. He realized he was staring. He forced himself to breathe quietly. This is ridiculous, he thought. She's a child, and not just any child. She's... His mind stopped himself from finishing the sentence. She's the maid's daughter. He had seen her around the house, of course, running behind her mother, holding a small bag, quietly eating in the staff dining area, sometimes drawing on scrap paper while her mother cleaned the upstairs rooms. He never really looked at what she drew. It was none of his concern, until now. Elena, Zuri said, turning to his daughter, you remember what we said about patterns? That they repeat, Elena answered, like the beats in music. Yes, Zuri clapped. And numbers have beats too. Look at this. She wrote a short sequence of numbers on the board and circled them. When you see the rhythm, you can guess what comes next. It's like guessing the next note in your favorite song. Elena's eyes widened. That's why I was so bad at math, she said slowly. No one ever made it feel like music. Zuri's smile softened. You're not bad at it, she whispered. You just needed the right song. Adrian felt something crack inside him. He had spent years building companies, giving speeches, shaping markets. He had paid for the best schools, the finest gadgets, the smartest tutors. He had been proud of providing everything, but he had never once sat down with his children to explain anything like this. Not with patience, not with love. He had been too busy. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A partner's name flashed on the screen. For the first time in his life, Adrian ignored it. He slipped the phone back in and kept watching. A few minutes passed before Zuri turned toward the door to grab an eraser. She froze, her eyes locked with Adrian's. The marker slid from her hand and dropped to the floor with a soft tap. Mr. Cole, she stammered, her voice small now. I didn't know you were home. Elena and Max spun around. Dad! Max jumped from his chair. You're early. Elena quickly closed her notebook, nervous. Adrian stepped into the room, feeling every pair of eyes on him. He looked at the whiteboard again, then at Zuri, then at his children. What is going on here? He asked quietly. Leanne, who had been dusting books in the corner, almost dropped her cloth. She hurried forward, her face pale. Sir, I'm so sorry, she blurted. I told her not to disturb the children. Mama, no, Zuri cried, her little hands clenching. It was my idea. Max rushed to speak. Dad, it's not bad. Zuri is helping us with math and science, and it's actually fun. Elena nodded quickly. She explains things in a way we understand. We asked her to teach us. Adrian raised a hand. One at a time. The room fell silent. He turned to Zuri. Her shoulders were shaking. She looked like she was ready to be punished for a crime. Did you draw those? He asked, pointing to the board. She swallowed. Yes, sir. And you understand them? She hesitated, then lifted her chin slightly. Yes, sir. How? The word came out sharper than he intended. Leanne stepped in, voice trembling. Sir, Zuri reads. A lot. Old books, free lessons online, anything she can find. Back home, before we came here, her teacher said she was special. But we had no money to keep her in a good school. Zuri's eyes dropped to the floor. I wasn't trying to teach for real, she muttered. I just wanted to show them why numbers are not scary. Elena spoke up, her voice firm. Dad, she's better than all our tutors. Adrian stared at his daughter. Better? He repeated. Yes, Elena said, because she cares if we understand, not just if we pass. The words hit him like a slap. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, lost for a moment. He thought about all the times he had signed checks for tutoring programs without even reading their brochures. All the times he had told himself they're getting the best, so he wouldn't have to feel guilty for being absent. And here, standing in front of him in a simple dress, with ink on her fingers and worry in her eyes, was an 8-year-old child who had given his children something he never had. Attention, connection, inspiration. He exhaled slowly. You're not in trouble, he said at last, looking at Zuri. Her eyes lifted, confused. You're not, she whispered. No, he replied. His voice was softer now. I just didn't know. He turned to Leanne. Why didn't you ever tell me your daughter was this gifted? Leanne's eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink away. Sir, people like us, we don't talk about such things. We just work and stay quiet. The sentence hung in the air like a heavy curtain. Adrian looked at Zuri again. Her small hands were still shaking, but her eyes were clear, steady. There was something in them he recognized, something he had seen long ago in the mirror, before money and deals and pressure changed him. Hunger, not for food, for a chance. I see, he murmured. He glanced once more at the whiteboard, at his children's faces, at the girl who had dared to climb a stool and rewrite the rules in his house without even knowing it. That night, far after the house went dark and the staff went to sleep, Adrian lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He was a millionaire who thought he understood value, but now all he could see was a little girl, with a marker in her hand and a world of ideas in her head, teaching his children for free, while he, with all his wealth, had never truly taught them anything at all. Adrian woke before sunrise. For a man who usually slept past 8, this was unusual, but something in him felt restless, like the gears in his mind had begun to turn in a new direction. He kept remembering the look on Zuri's face when she realized he had been watching, the shock, the fear, and underneath it the quiet intelligence she tried to hide. He had seen hundreds of talented people in his career, analysts, architects, inventors, but nothing prepared him for an 8-year-old girl standing on a stool, teaching algebra with the confidence of a professor. He got dressed slowly that morning, choosing clothes without really seeing them. When he stepped out into the hallway, he heard soft footsteps and hushed voices coming from the study room again. So she's back, he thought. Something compelled him forward. He didn't enter through the main door this time. Instead, he walked around to the hallway that connected to the huge window behind the study table. From there, he could see inside without being seen. The view stunned him all over again. The study lamp glowed warmly. Zuri sat cross-legged on the floor with Max and Elena. The whiteboard was wiped clean, but papers full of colorful drawings surrounded them like fallen leaves. Max was frowning at a diagram, pencil tapping his cheek. Elena leaned closer to Zuri, listening intently. Zuri was explaining something using 3 bottle caps and a piece of string. Her braids bounced lightly as she spoke. When things pull against each other, she said, stretching the string between the bottle caps, they create balance. Even if one side is heavier, the string tries to keep the shape steady. That's kind of like us, Max said thoughtfully. Elena and I fight a lot, but we still stay connected. That's siblings, Zuri said, giggling. You're supposed to argue, but you're also supposed to hold each other up. Elena looked impressed. And that's physics? Yes. Zuri smiled. And life. Adrian blinked. Physics, sibling bonds, balance. She made it sound simple, beautiful even. He had paid professional tutors thousands of dollars, yet none of them had captured his children's attention for more than 10 minutes. But here was Zuri, an 8-year-old with mismatched socks and ink stains on her palms, turning learning into magic. He slowly backed away from the window and stepped inside, through the main door. The 3 children jumped a little, surprised. Papers scattered. "Dad," Max said, embarrassed. "We were, doing science stuff." Elena added quickly, "Zuri was showing us how forces work. It actually makes sense now." Zuri lowered her head, suddenly quiet. She always shrank when adults entered the room, as if preparing herself for blame. Adrian walked closer, trying to control the softness in his tone. "What were you teaching today?" he asked gently. Zuri hesitated. "Just small things." "Small things?" He picked up one of the papers. It was a hand-drawn diagram of planets orbiting a bright yellow sun. Each orbit was carefully measured. Tiny symbols indicated gravity pulls. A small note in the corner read, "Space is just math that learned how to dance." Adrian stared at the sentence. Who thinks like this at 8? He looked at Zuri. She fidgeted with the hem of her dress, unsure if he was pleased or angry. "You wrote this?" he asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes, sir." "And you understand it?" She nodded. Her braids swayed. "Who taught you these things, Zuri?" "No one," she said quietly. "I learn them because I like how they feel." "How they feel?" Adrian repeated. She looked up at him then. Really looked. Her eyes had that deep, searching quality he had only seen in people who lived more in their minds than in the world. "They feel like puzzles," she said, "and when I solve them, it makes the world feel less scary." Adrian inhaled sharply. Elena touched Zuri's shoulder. "She makes everything understandable, Dad. Yesterday I finally understood why fractions work." "No tutor ever explained it like that," Max added. "She made atoms sound like tiny families. That's why I remembered them." Adrian's heart squeezed. His children were talking about science the way most kids talked about games. He turned to Zuri again. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" he asked. Her answer came instantly, without doubt, without hesitation. "A person who fixes things." "What kind of things?" "Anything broken," she said. "Machines, bridges, maybe people's fears." Adrian felt a sting behind his eyes. How could a child speak with that kind of wisdom? He knelt down so he was at her level. "Zuri," he said, "you don't have to hide how smart you are in this house. Do you understand?" Her lips parted slightly. "But Mama says people don't like when kids act too clever. She says smart children make adults uncomfortable." Adrian swallowed hard. That sentence hit him in a place he didn't know was vulnerable. Elena whispered, "Dad, she should be in a real school, a really good one." Max nodded eagerly. "Yeah? She's smarter than our whole class combined." Before Adrian could reply, the study door opened quietly. Leanne entered with a laundry basket. When she saw Adrian kneeling beside her daughter, she froze. I'm sorry, sir," she whispered. "Zuri wasn't bothering them, I promise. She wasn't bothering them," Adrian interrupted softly. "She was helping them." Leanne looked confused at first, and then frightened. "But sir, it is not her place." "It became her place the moment she began teaching my children better than any tutor I've hired." Leanne's breath caught. She lowered her basket to the floor. Adrian stood and faced her fully. "Why didn't you ever tell me she was gifted?" Leanne stared at her hands. "Sir, people like us don't get to talk about gifts. Life takes those away before they grow. I didn't want to hope for something we can't reach." Those words sank deep inside him. People like us. He had heard variations of that phrase his entire life, from workers, from assistants, from poor families he donated to. but hearing it from a mother who carried invisible dreams made it hit differently. He suddenly felt ashamed of his wealth, not for having it, but for how blind it had made him. He cleared his throat gently. "Leanne, she deserves opportunities, real ones, and I want to help." "No, sir," she said instinctively. "We don't want charity." "It's not charity," Adrian said firmly. "It's recognition." Zuri looked between them, confused and worried. Adrian softened again as he turned to her. "I want you to keep learning," he told her, "and I want you to keep teaching my children, and if you want to." Her eyes brightened, but she still hesitated. "Will I get in trouble?" "Not from me." Elena reached for Zuri's hand. "You're like our tiny professor," Max added, grinning. "Yeah, the smartest kid in the mansion." For the first time, Zuri's face lit up fully, wide, pure, fearless. Adrian stood there and absorbed the scene. His children happy, a little genius glowing, a mother trembling with a mixture of fear and pride. He realized this small girl had changed something inside him, quietly, without effort, without knowing she had done it. She had opened a door he didn't even realize was locked. And as he watched her explain a new pattern on the board, he wondered something that kept echoing in his mind. How many brilliant children in the world remain invisible simply because no one bothered to look? That day, Adrian didn't go to the office. He stayed home, not because he had to, but because for the first time in years he wanted to learn something too. Adrian had expected things to change, but not like this. After 2 weeks of Zuri teaching his children in the study room every evening, the mansion felt different. Laughter floated down the hallways. Elena came down to breakfast with notebooks full of doodles and ideas. Max stopped complaining about homework entirely, and Adrian found himself coming home early on purpose. It should have been perfect, but perfection has enemies. The trouble began quietly, like a cough ignored until it grows into something dangerous. One morning, while Adrian was reviewing documents in the living room, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his business partner, Jonah. "Heard a rumor. Are you letting household staff teach your kids? Please tell me it's a misunderstanding." Adrian frowned. He replied only, "Where did you hear that?" The next message came instantly. "People talk. Investors talk. Get ahead of this. This is bad optics, bad optics." The words made his jaw tighten. He put the phone aside, but his discomfort didn't leave him. Later that day, when Adrian arrived at Max's school for a meeting, 2 mothers whispered to each other as he walked by. "That's him. The one who lets the maid's child teach his rich kids." Imagine the embarrassment. He kept walking, pretending he didn't hear, but something cold settled in his stomach. People weren't just talking, they were judging. When he got home, he found Elena sitting on her bed, wiping her cheeks quickly. "Elena," he sat beside her. "What happened?" She looked down at her hands. "Some girls at school were laughing at me. They said I was stupid for letting an 8-year-old teach me." "Who said that?" he asked, his voice hard. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. I thought what we were doing was special. They made it sound like a joke." Adrian exhaled slowly, controlling the anger rising in his chest. "It is special," he said gently. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." She nodded, but her eyes still looked wounded. When he stepped out of her room, he found Max waiting in the hallway. His fists were clenched. "I got in trouble," Max blurted. "For what?" Max looked ashamed. "A boy said Zuri was just a maid's kid pretending to be smart. I pushed him." Adrian's heart tightened. "Did you hurt him?" "No," Max muttered, "but I yelled. I said Zuri is smarter than all of them combined." Adrian placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm not angry, but next time use your words, not your fists." The night felt heavy. When Zuri arrived for her usual study time, she sensed the tension immediately. She sat down quietly, not bouncing with her usual energy. When Elena didn't smile back, Zuri's shoulders drooped a little. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked softly. Elena shook her head quickly. "No, not at all." Max nodded. "You're amazing, Zuri." But Zuri still looked uncertain. Adrian watched from the doorway, unseen. His chest ached. He knew why people were reacting this way. It wasn't Zuri they had a problem with. It was her background, her skin, her class, her mother's job, her unexpected brilliance. They couldn't understand it. So they mocked it. Later that night, Adrian sat alone in his dimly lit office. The glow of his computer screen reflected documents he wasn't reading. The phone vibrated again. His lawyer this time. "Several board members want a discussion. Concerns about your judgment, especially regarding your children's education. This might come up at tomorrow's meeting. Be prepared." Adrian leaned back, closing his eyes. First, the gossip, then the school parents, then his own company, all because of one little girl. But the strange thing was, he didn't feel angry at her. He felt angry at himself for living in a world where people didn't look deeper than status. The next evening he heard soft crying coming from the kitchen. He followed the sound and found Zuri sitting alone on a stool, hugging her backpack. Her small shoulders shook. Adrian approached carefully. "Zuri?" She jumped, wiping her eyes quickly. "Sorry, sir. I'm fine." He kneeled beside her. "You don't have to hide your tears." She sniffed. "Mama said people are talking about me and about your house. I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't," he said firmly, "but everyone is upset." Her voice cracked. "Your kids got in trouble because of me. People think I'm pretending to be smart." Adrian clenched his jaw. "You're not pretending." Zuri looked at him with damp eyelashes. "Then why does everyone hate it so much?" He felt something twist painfully in his chest. "Because," he said slowly, "people fear what they don't understand. And you, Zuri, are something they've never seen before." Her small hand tightened around the strap of her bag. "I think maybe I should stop teaching them," she whispered. The words landed like a blow. "No," Adrian said quickly. "Don't say that." "It's better, sir. I don't want to make things worse." "You're making things better," he insisted, his voice raw. "My children are learning. They're happy. And that matters more than anything people say." Zuri swallowed, unsure. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You changed this house, Zuri," he said. "Don't let the world scare you away." Before she could reply, her mother rushed in. "Sir," Leanne's voice trembled, "I need to talk to you." Adrian stood. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, her hands shaking. "I got a letter from back home." Zuri looked up. "Is it Grandma?" Leanne nodded, eyes filling. "She's very sick. The doctor says she doesn't have much time. I need to take Zuri back. I'm sorry. I know this is sudden." Adrian felt the ground tilt beneath him. He looked at Zuri, small, brilliant, fragile, and felt something break. "When do you need to leave?" he whispered. "As soon as possible," Leanne said. "Tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word sliced the air like a blade. Zuri pushed her face into her mother's side, tears falling again. "I don't want to leave," she choked out. "I want to stay. I want to learn. I want to teach Max and Elena." Adrian had never felt so powerless. But then something hardened inside him. Not anger, not fear. Something sharper. Determination. He straightened. "You're not going alone," he said. "I'll take care of everything. Flights, doctors, whatever your mother needs." Leanne shook her head. "Sir, we cannot accept—" "This isn't charity," he said. "It's gratitude." Her mouth fell open, but she couldn't speak. Adrian looked at Zuri, his voice gentler now. "You go take care of your grandmother," he said softly. "Your journey isn't ending here. You have more to teach, more to become. We'll be here when you come back." Zuri stared at him through tears. "You promise?" she whispered. "I promise," he said. And in that moment, With gossip swirling outside and judgment closing in like a storm, Adrian realized something. He didn't care what the world thought. He cared about one thing only, making sure this little girl with a brilliant mind and a brave heart got the chance she deserved, even if he had to fight the whole world to give it to her. The next morning, the mansion felt heavier than usual. Suitcases were lined against the wall. Leanne stood near the door, clutching Zuri's small hand. Elena and Max hovered close by, trying to be brave. Adrian paced slowly, checking his watch, even though he already knew the time by heart. The private jet was ready. The doctors were waiting. This was really happening. Zuri was leaving. When the car arrived, Zuri turned back one last time, her eyes searching for Adrian. He walked to her, kneeling so they were eye level again, an act he'd never done for anyone before her. "You take care of your grandmother," he said softly. Zuri sniffed. "And you take care of Max and Elena, okay?" He smiled gently. "I will, but they're going to miss you terribly." She hesitated. "I'll miss them too. And you." Something tightened in his chest at those last two words. He touched her shoulder lightly. "Remember what you told my children, that every problem has a pattern, even the sad ones. And if you look closely enough, you'll find the way through." Zuri gave a tiny nod, then let go of his hand and climbed into the car. Adrian watched until the car disappeared down the road. When he finally turned around, Max was crying openly. Elena wiped her tears quietly, and Adrian, for the first time in his life, canceled every meeting on his calendar. He needed to be there for his children. He also needed to keep his promise. 2 weeks later, Adrian stepped off his jet into a world far removed from polished hallways and glass skyscrapers. Zuri's village was small, humble, and scarred by time. Houses made of clay, roofs patched with tin sheets, children playing barefoot in dusty lanes. Women walked with baskets on their heads. Men worked with tired determination. And in the center of it all was Zuri, running toward him with a smile so bright it erased the miles between their worlds. "Mr. Cole!" she shouted, waving wildly. He wasn't used to being welcomed like that. People usually bowed, stepped aside, softened their voices around him. But Zuri ran straight into him, hugging him fiercely. "You came!" she cried. Adrian knelt again so she didn't have to reach up. "Of course I came." The village chief greeted him with respect, though confusion lingered in his eyes. Why would a millionaire travel across countries for a maid's child? Adrian didn't care what it looked like. He had seen too much already. He saw children sitting under a dying tree, sharing one broken chalk. He saw mothers teaching kids to count using stones because paper was rare. He saw boys reading from pages torn out of old books. He saw hunger, both for food and for knowledge. And he saw Zuri in the middle of it all, kneeling in the dust with other children, drawing solar systems with a stick, explaining the planets with the same joy she had shown in his mansion. This, he realized, was her real classroom. That evening he visited Zuri's grandmother. The old woman was frail but proud, her wrinkled hands trembling as she greeted him. "She talks about your children every day," she whispered. "She says she found a place where her mind felt safe." Her words hit him deeper than any boardroom success ever had. When he left the small house, he found Leanne wiping her eyes outside. "Sir," she said quietly, "you did not have to come all this way." "Yes," Adrian replied, "I did." "Why?" she whispered. Adrian looked at the dirt road, the dusty sky, the tiny homes holding dreams bigger than the walls. "Because your daughter reminded me of something I forgot," he said. "That brilliance can exist anywhere. That talent is not born in mansions. It's born in hearts." Leanne covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "And I don't intend to let her gift fade because life was unfair." The next morning, Adrian gathered the villagers, teachers, and elders under the big tree. He stood before them, not as the powerful CEO, but as a man who finally understood the meaning of purpose. "I came here because of a girl named Zuri," he began. "A girl who taught my children more than all the tutors I paid for. A girl who showed me that genius needs soil, water, and sunlight to grow, not wealth." People murmured, moved and curious. Adrian continued, "I am building something here, a place where every child in this village can learn freely. Books, technology, teachers, whatever they need." Zuri's mouth fell open. "A school?" she gasped. "Not just a school," Adrian said. "A learning center, a place where your mind can fly as high as it wants." Children cheered, parents cried. Even the chief wiped a tear. Zuri ran up to him, grabbing his hand. "You're building it for us?" "No," Adrian said. "I'm building it with you." Zuri hugged him so tightly he felt something inside him shift, some old piece of himself coming back to life. For the next month, Adrian stayed in the village longer than he had ever planned. Engineers flew in, architects arrived, materials were brought, villagers helped carry stones, wood, and tools. And every day, Zuri sat right beside Adrian, sketching ideas for classrooms, playgrounds, and science corners. "This should be a reading tree," she said once, pointing to a tall mango tree. "Kids can sit around it and read after school." He smiled. "Then a reading tree it shall be." She pointed again. "And this corner should be for girls who want to learn math like me." Adrian's chest warmed. "Then we'll make that happen." Days turned into weeks. The learning center rose from the ground beautifully proudly, an idea born from an 8-year-old mind. On the last day before he flew home, Zuri handed Adrian a small folded paper. "This is from me," she whispered. Inside was a drawing, Adrian standing beside her, Max and Elena, all holding books. At the bottom she had scribbled in shaky handwriting, "You didn't just help me learn, you helped me believe." He had to look away for a moment. Months passed. Back home, Elena and Max waited every day for video calls from Zuri. They told her about school, showed her their drawings, and asked her dozens of questions. Adrian sometimes joined the calls too. Quietly, at first, then more warmly. He listened. He learned. He found himself smiling more than he had in years. And when the grand opening day of the Learning Center came, he, Elena, and Max flew to the village to stand beside Zuri as she cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered. The school bells rang for the first time. Children swarmed inside, eyes wide with hope. And Zuri, small, brilliant, brave Zuri, stood proudly at the doorway, welcoming them like a leader, like a teacher, like someone finally standing inside the future she deserved. Adrian placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is your legacy, Zuri," he said softly. She shook her head. "No, Mr. Cole, this is ours." He looked at her, this tiny girl who had turned his mansion into a classroom, his children into dreamers, and his life into something meaningful. And he realized something he would never forget. The greatest investment he ever made wasn't in stocks, companies, or empires. It was in a little girl who taught him that brilliance blooms wherever kindness dares to plant its seeds. And some teachers, no matter how young, leave footprints that carry us for a lifetime.
If this story touched your heart, remember this: genius can come from anywhere, and kindness can change a life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.